So in preparation for my Balenciaga fabric, I've been doing some research on Balenciaga and his legacy. And so I'm very, very excited for this project. I plan to share some information about the designer with you guys as I sew this. So here is the authentic Balenciaga fabric. It was dead stock, so when fashion houses don't use all of their fabric, as we all become more aware of waste, they sell their leftover fabric, their dead stock. So here we have authentic Balenciaga fabric. It feels expensive. It feels great. I'm excited to use it. And the pattern I'm going to use is a vintage reproduction. It's Butterick 5209. I love this halter detail gathered here at the bust, but I'm going to be doing version B with the little sleeves. I think it's just a really cute dress, and I think the fabric will lend itself to it. Gather really nicely there, and that detail will just look so crisp and pretty. And so that is what we're doing today. Let's get right into it. So Cristobal Balenciaga was born in 1895 in a remote fishing village in Spain. He learned sewing and tailoring at his mother's knee. By 1937, the talented and persistent young man had opened his own design salon in Paris, and in the years following the Second World War, he emerged as a designer to be reckoned with in the world of haute couture. The House of Balenciaga grew to serve an international clientele from locations in Paris, Madrid, and Barcelona, and from 1937 to its closing in 1968, created some of the most outstanding and innovative examples of French and Spanish haute couture of the era. So here's piece number 1, all cut out. I cut a size 18. I did like a tissue fitting. I didn't do a mock-up. I hope I don't live to regret that. I thought it would be better just to cut it a little bit bigger than I thought that I needed, because it would be easier to just take it in than have to let it out. But I think the 18 is gonna do just fine. The tissue fitting went decently. Okay, so piece number 1. The first thing we're going to do is gather between the markings at the bottom. Fashion journalists thought Balenciaga important, but they often found him difficult to classify. Since his styles did not change radically from season to season, nor did he provide snappy names for them. In general, his dramatic color combinations and textural effects attracted attention. In the late 1930s and throughout the Second World War, his clothes show very similar characteristics to those of his contemporaries. For day wear, the smart tailored suits and coats of his early collections with their square shoulders and nipped-in waist were in line with current styles, as were his full-skirted evening dresses, revivals from the Second Empire in France, and his slinkier, body-hugging models. During and immediately after the war, Balenciaga continued to design classic day wear and striking evening attire, despite the Nazi occupation of Paris and restrictions on the use of fabrics and trimmings. Photographs of his designs reveal practical tailored suits, square-shouldered, fitted at the waist, and skirts to just below the knee. The detail and differentiation resided in buttons and trimmings, contrast sashes, or belts. The shoulder line began to relax into a more sloping shape only from 1946 to 47, and his skirts began to lengthen at about the same date. So today is day 2 of the Balenciaga project. I thought I was going to work well into the night last night. So I came in here, so some of that footage from last night might be really dark, but no worries because I didn't get very far anyway. I'm on the part where you take the midriff piece and attach it to the halter piece around the neck, and you have to gather it down. And I couldn't figure out if I had it upside down, if it was going the right, like connected the right way, attached in the right place. I couldn't really get anything to go right. And so I decided to just walk away and then come back today fresh, and be able to really put in some work. I'm thinking that this should be a fairly quick make. I don't think it should take too long. We'll see. It is fully lined, so that's a thing. And then this fabric was actually harder to cut out than that polka dot silk that I had worked with, so that was a little bit of a thing. Luckily there weren't very many pieces, because that was a thing. So I did get piece number 2 gathered down and attached on here before I walked away last night, so I just want to make sure that that is right and looks good, and then I'm going to take it to the sewing machine and get it stitched on, and then we'll be moving along. And I'm thinking we should be able to get it finished today. We'll see what happens. So let's get back into day 2 of the Balenciaga project. One aspect of Balenciaga's clothing that remains the same today is that not many women can actually afford a made-to-measure wardrobe from Balenciaga, even back then. But some could afford exclusive department store adaptations that cost about 1/4 of the house price, and others could afford ready-to-wear adaptations made by reputable houses from the London Model House Group. So essentially, these were legal knockoffs, or reproductions rather, of garments made by Balenciaga that he would sell. So it's not much different from what I'm doing here by buying some dead stock fabric directly from Balenciaga, well, through an intermediary, which was Mood Fabrics. But this is as close as I'll get to having a Balenciaga dress. So now that I have pieces 1 and 2 attached, now this is center back, and we have to stitch it. And then we stitch to the dot. So now that we've attached it as center back, the next step is to stay stitch the armhole from the small dot all the way to the edge. So I can't help but wonder, as I made this dress, was this dress in the style of something Balenciaga himself would have made? I was able to find some similar silhouettes, but not anything really close. He designed clothes that moved around a woman's figure, caressing it. This was very appealing to his customers, of course, because the clothing was flattering. And I just don't find this dress to be flattering on me at all. So now I have piece number 3 that's gonna need to be stitched at center back and then stopping at the square. I'm gonna do the lining piece as well. I hadn't been doing the lining pieces at the same time, mainly because I wanted to kind of work through the pattern first, because then if it didn't look as good, I could decide which one was the lining and which one was going to be the outer fabric, since I use the same fabric. So this is piece number 3, getting stitched down the back, down center back, stopping at the square, and then the edge of piece number 4, the bodice back, needs to be stay stitched. So I'm going to do both of those steps now. As I said in the beginning, and you will see at the end, I skipped the step of a proper mock-up. I did a tissue fitting, and I thought that would be sufficient. And that is not in the style of Balenciaga. The production of an item for the house of Balenciaga was an incredible artisanal process, which was labor-intensive and in which all the steps had been laid down by Balenciaga. The result was a product of unique quality that was possible thanks only to the mastery of the haute couture that Balenciaga practiced. Balenciaga himself was able to perform every step in the process of garment making: pattern and toile making, cutting, sewing, and fitting. The standard he set for his couture house required great dedication. When a collection was being prepared, he was completely focused and concentrated on his work. In addition, he emphasized quality in every detail relating to how his image was projected and how he might be perceived by clients, from boutique decoration, window displays, and fashion shows to client service. So, lesson for me to be learned here is taking care and taking all of those steps that are so important. I was getting so much better about them, but I looked at the silhouette of this dress and the tissue fitting, and I was more concerned about the way that if it fit or not, rather than if it was going to be flattering or not. And that is where I made the mistakes. And I'm making a promise to myself that they won't happen again. I hope that was right. Let's see, these sleeves were a little tricky, like making sure I have them in the right place. Oh no, we're gonna have to do that over. I caught the fabric right there, so I'm gonna have to unpick that. This is the lining, so it's not a huge deal, but I'm gonna unpick it anyway. We're gonna see what happens. But the front is attached to the back at this point. Yeah, looks pretty good, minus this one little spot. I'm gonna unpick this right here and stitch it again. And then I'm going to do the outer fabric. I'll get some footage pinning that on just so you can sort of see how that goes. So here is the back with that sleeve attached. Now we have to attach it to the front. I think I'm gonna start with center back and notches and whatnot, because those are the things that I know to be true. I'm gonna get the notches pinned. That's center back. Now I'm beginning work on the skirt pieces that I had to cut 6 inches off because I just did not have enough fabric, but I am on the shorter side, so it's gonna be okay. I'm hoping. I really just didn't have a choice. Of course, I can decrease the size of the hem. So yes, I think it was either 5 or 6 inches I took off, but I didn't have a choice. And so the skirt is 4 pieces, 2 front, 2 back, gathered at the side, and leaving the left side open for a zipper. And that's really... This fabric itself, like the texture, the feel of it, I'm not even really sure what to call it. It was difficult to work with. I don't even know really what to say about it. Even though Balenciaga had a penchant for silks and many other different types of fabric, in the post-war years, as new developments in fiber technology made available wider ranges of fabrics with properties unlike their natural counterparts, Balenciaga worked closely with the silk manufacturer Abram of Zurich, from whom he commissioned silks for his fashion house. By 1953, Abraham was manufacturing ranges of textiles specifically for Balenciaga. Successfully so. For in the late 1950s, Balenciaga happily tried out his new synthetics, including fabrics using lurex, a yarn with a synthetic metallic finish. So I do feel as if this particular fabric is something that he would have chosen himself when he was running the fashion house. But I'm not 100% sure about the florals. During the years when he was running the fashion house, I can't find very many examples of him using floral fabric. There are a few, but not a lot. And so I can't say how authentic this is to his personal aesthetic, as of course he hasn't run the fashion house in decades. He has passed on decades ago. But I do believe they tried to stay true to his aesthetic as best as they could, with, of course, taking into account all of, modern things. He definitely believed in using the best and most up-to-date materials and already had good working relations with French textile manufacturers, some of which were to collaborate with him in the creation of new fabrics. His experience, knowledge, high standards, and business sense were a firm foundation, enabled the house to develop a reputation for quality and reliability. Such reassuring attributes benefit the business and its employees. Outsiders recognize both customer and employee loyalty. So I'm working on getting the lining pinned to the bodice. I know you stitched the neck edge, stopping between certain points, and the sleeve edges stopping between certain points, but I am tired, and so this is where we're going to call it for today. We're almost done. I did hem the skirt. It is over there, and yeah, we're going to call it a day on this. Made really good progress. It's probably 2 hours from complete, so I'm happy with what I got done today, but that is it for day 2. So this is the lining pinned all around this thing, and that part was pretty tricky. I think I would have rather had faced it than lined it. I don't know, but it was the thing. I did the thing, but it was definitely a thing. So there's not a lot of instruction for finishing it up once you get the lining stitched down, but I couldn't even really get in here to, oh yeah, I can't get in there. I need to understitch this better. Okay, so I need to understitch this, but the plan, what I'm doing here is folding the lining out, attaching that. I'm going to stitch it here, and then I'll fold over the seam allowance and stitch that down by hand. This is the inside of the garment. So I'm doing that for the sides and at center front, and then on the left side just to the notches, because then my zipper is going to go there. So I thought I had understitched the whole thing. I hadn't clearly. So now I got to take this apart and get in there to understitch that. That's definitely going to make a difference in how this lays. So I'm going to do that, and then while I'm there, I'm going to stitch these, and then I'll show you how I'm going to just stitch it down by hand. And then the corporate story of Balenciaga is much the same as that of competing houses. It has ceased to be an independent business and is now one of a stable of houses belonging to a major conglomerate with interested in branded luxury goods. Originally, after Balenciaga's death in 1972, the house passed into the hands of his nieces and nephews. In 1978, they sold the business and its name to a German group, which was responsible for launching the first ready-to-wear collections. I can't help but wonder how Cristobal Balenciaga would feel about me purchasing 3 yards of fabric with his name attached to it off of a website called Mood Fabrics and then making my own dress. I don't know. I'm not that proud of this dress, so quite certain he wouldn't be, but maybe he would respect me for trying. I hope so. Here it is. I do love the fabric, not necessarily the feel of it. If you see here, I should have raised that waist yoke portion, whatever you want to call it. It's way too short. That 6 inches off definitely made a difference. And where it sits at on my waist, I'm just not that proud of. I probably could have went with a smaller size and just done the full bust adjustment. I don't know. I want to say that this might be top 3 least favorite things I've ever made. I don't know. Maybe say something in the comments to cheer me up. Go ahead, gas me up, guys. And I will see you in the next video where I hopefully make something I like a lot better.